Hello and welcome. I'm going to be talking about the impacts of managerial systems on early childhood educators' work and the implication that has for teaching and learning for children. My name's Dr. Marg Rogers and I'm a senior lecturer in early childhood education at the University of New England. So managerialism is really the arm of neoliberalism. And neoliberalism was originally a type of economic model that was used after the Great Depression, and it became popular in America and then moved to other Western nations. And it's been picked up by Australia and many other Western nations. It was only an economic model to start with, but then the influences of it became apparent in other sectors of society, such as education, healthcare, and even social work. But the problem with that is that it has a very different philosophy than an economic model. But unfortunately, it's become an intrinsic part of the people who work in education, such as educators, life, and it negatively affects the educators and their image of themselves as they work. In this system, workers are placed in a position of mistrust, whereas authorities and supervisors are positioned as trustworthy. Systems are created to ensure managers can micromanage what the workers do, and workers become mere technicians. And it's worked in the areas of, say, factory management, where you were trying to have a particular quality and control the quality of something that was made over and over again, such as biscuits. But when we're looking at children, that's really quite different because they're so individual. So authorities and supervisors justify managerialism by saying it is a way of controlling or improving quality. And in these systems, workers need to spend an amazing amount of time doing these tasks to prove that they are producing quality. Quality is described as something that is uniform despite the differences in settings, children, families and cultures. And quality is seen to be something that can be achieved through competition, through regulation. So we have in the early childhood sector that services are exceeding the expectations or the framework or the standards, and then you have ones that are not meeting the standards, and so everything starts to be rated. It also means that the workers are filling in inordinate amounts of checklists in order to be performing their jobs and in order to be producing this thing that's called quality according to government agencies and policy. So Sims describes the state as a tightly defined top-down approach that is used to assure quality. And this has the effect of limiting the flexibility, and it also deprofessionalises the work of early childhood professionals. Their services are seen as businesses and products, and educators are constantly asked to improve their practices, even if they're doing quite well. And this is exhausting and unsustainable. So sometimes the workers' strengths are generally ignored, and you can see that in some of our frameworks and early childhood standards as well. Educators are expected that they are recognising the strengths of parents and of families and of children, but yet their strengths and their interests are completely ignored. Sometimes early childhood educators and people in these neoliberal systems start to take on that mantra. If you're in an abusive relationship and you're being told you're hopeless and you don't know what you're doing, after a while you actually start to believe that. And so educators sometimes will repeat this mantra, oh, look, I need these checklists because that's what quality is, or that's what quality looks like. Or if they do something amazing with the children, they suddenly think, oh, well, I'm not sure that that is good quality because it's not on this list of what the government believes quality looks like. So to look at these issues of educators' work within a highly regulated environment, I've been leading an international team, and we've been using a mixed method study that used a survey. And it uses thematical analysis, and it's looking at educators in 5 different countries. I'm only going to be exploring the Australian context today, and only 2 themes: managerial impacts of micromanagement and the accreditation impacts on the quality and time with children. So Australia has one of the highest levels of privatisation of early childhood education in the world. We've got a lack of qualified early childhood teachers. Many centres can't enrol to capacity due to a lack of educators. And a CEQA's National Workforce Strategy Survey revealed burnout, administrative overload and overwork to be the reason that the educators wanted to leave the sector early. There is a high staff turnover, and in a study of 4,000 educators in 2021, 73% said they plan to leave in the next 3 years. And of those who didn't plan to leave, 46% said they thought about leaving all of the time or most of the time, which is quite alarming. Since the pandemic, the number of job advertisements have doubled and many services have closed, creating childcare deserts. And that's where 3 or more families are wanting one place. Educators in Australia continue to be one of the lowest paid workers, and however, we've got privatisation, and some of the CEOs in these large corporate organisations have eye-watering salaries and unbelievable profits. So how do these these managerial systems impact micromanagement within services? So it really did impact with the number of Australian educators, which is about 50, their feelings of micromanagement. So 63% of educators felt micromanaged by their supervisors in the last week, while over 78% said they felt micromanaged by governments, the governmental requirements and the documents. So some of the educators said that they wanted the government to trust us to work as professionals and stop micromanaging our sector. So accreditation, and that happens every 3 years for services, but it can happen more often if a service isn't doing so well. So managerial systems were found to be difficult for educators when they were trying to do accreditation, because the amount of documentation was overwhelming during that time. So you can see there that there was most of them had a sharp decline at that time, or a decline during accreditation with the amount of time they could have with the children. And I'll leave you a moment there to read some of the comments from the educators. And some of them are quite alarming, because this is a system, remember, that is to improve quality, and yet it actually creates a time of poor quality because they're not able to spend time with children. So how do government documents improve learning? Well, many of the educators thought that they actually didn't improve those. So here are some comments from educators, and again, I'll give you some time to read. A lot of them thought that there were, elements of them that were worth preserving, such as child protection measures, but the rest of it was stifling the creativity within services. It was a cookie cutter approach, and it wasn't suitable for children, and the amount of pressure it put on educators with this enormous burden of paperwork there. So managerial systems impact burnout. And so in the study of the 50 or 51 educators, there were 68% felt frustrated 3 or more times in the last week, which is very high. And then some of the educators commented on having to try and fill in some of this paperwork, and they've given active examples there, and how difficult that was to do when the children were active in the yard, and they had to take their attention off the children to do this paperwork. So within educator burnout, there were a lot of themes such as unpaid hours, poor morale, micromanagement, overwork, administrative overload, managerial systems, invisibility, status pay, stress levels, quality and documentation versus quality interactions, and unpaid hours that were all contributing to educator burnout. And they were the themes within the wider study. So here are my references. For your attention today.